Aloha and welcome back to Yinspired. Today we have Jeremy Cornish, L.Ac, licensed acupuncturist with us. I've known Jeremy for too long. I'm not even going to try to do the math, maybe decades. I'm so grateful for you to share your time with us today. I'm very excited to see where this conversation takes us. Your brain works very different from mine. I've always really respected that. And we always end up in these very mysterious and sometimes controversial tugging back and forth, push and pull conversations. And I'm excited. Maybe we'll go there today. We'll see. So welcome to the podcast, Jeremy.
Thanks.
Mind introducing yourself to our listeners?
My name is Jeremy. I run the Damn Good Doctors Club, which is basically a group for practitioners all over the world. And I kind of see it as like practice management from the future. So that's what we do. And it's a really fun thing. And what we're working on is taking everything that we learned from our various medical traditions and synthesizing it and doing things in a way that allows for, I know we're going to talk about this eventually, but basically like that's two types of excellence. You want to give an excellent experience to the people you're working with, like your patients or your clients or however you call it. And then you also want to have an excellent experience as a practitioner and not burn out. So there's no reason that we can't have super healthy, very viable businesses and still deliver world-class service. So that's kind of like what guides that. And then, we got a real cozy group of very warm individuals, and it's just a fun thing to do. So it's kept my mind evolving, trying to solve all these problems.
Wonderful. And just, you're in the United States, right?
Yes.
You never know where everyone has moved off to after all these years.
Yeah.
So you're in the US. That's awesome. And it sounds like that's mobile, right? That's not local necessarily. You're doing you're working with people all over the globe.
Yeah, I'm 100% online. So I did that with Modern Vitality was my kind of health project, and had a brick-and-mortar clinic, doing acupuncture and herbs and all that. And I got my brick-and-mortar down to 2 half days per week. I was supporting a family of 6 in a place with a viciously high cost of living, and I was working 2 half days per week.
Washington State.
Yes, it was Washington State, beautiful, idyllic island. It was wonderful, but I got the clinic very, very efficient, and then was working on online programs for people all over the world with complex chronic health conditions, like Lyme and EBV and mold illness and chronic fatigue syndrome and all this kind of stuff. So it was really cool because I started to find out how to run an online business in a way where, for one, it worked, because online is tricky. Like you wind up, if you follow a lot of the kind of the common things, it's like, get your funnel, get your landing page, you're on sales calls with people and all this kind of stuff. And you're kind of rolling the dice with like ad spend, you're paying Facebook or Instagram or Meta or whatever, and you're kind of, or YouTube, and you're kind of like dumping all this money into this slot machine and kind of hoping that things work out. And anyway, it can be really, really hard to make those work. Some people can make it work really well, but I would say they're probably the minority of people. Something happens, they get lucky or whatever. It's hard to replicate that. So anyway, I got into some different models where it was more like group work and a lot more organic. And I was able to make the online business part work. Financially, it was a viable business, but also those 2 types of excellence were in place. Like I really enjoyed more of a teaching role and helping people get more empowered around their health, and the location and time freedom. I'm used to it now, right? It'd be, I can't go back.
Once you experience that as a clinician, that's kind of unheard of.
It's dreamy. So, and then the other side of it is the people are getting their health back, So I'd get these people sending in pictures, like one lady especially, it really sticks with me because she sent a picture of her. She'd taken a picture of her eyes, and then a year later, she took a picture of her eyes again. And then a year later, she took a picture of her eyes. And I mean, you can see this person coming back from the dead, basically.
Right.
There were a lot of them like that. And for me, it blew apart. I had to realize that I've been making subconscious assumptions about how things had to be in terms of using herbs or delivering my knowledge base, and we pattern after our role models, and we pattern after the general culture of our industry. So when we're going through school, we pick up training glitches, right? So it's like we start to have all these assumptions about what treatment needs to look like. I have to have a clinic, and you start kind of questioning that. And it's like, do I need to have a clinic? Do I need to see people like face to face? Of course, if you're doing acupuncture or massage or something, like, yeah, you kind of do. But, if you give yourself a permission to have a thought experiment and go, what if I couldn't see this patient face to face, right? How could I help them? And one of the members in our group kind of framed this really well. And she was like, I've been looking at it like, I've got these great patients, but they, for some reason, can't make it into the office today. What could I do instead? And I'm like, whoa, that's a great way to look at it, because now all of a sudden your mind starts going, well, I can teach them acupressure. I can teach them, I can set them up with herbs. I can teach them different like breath work, even it's very
Mhm.
strategic, right? And it'll kind of change the biochemistry of their body if they do certain types of breathing when they're having certain symptoms. And all of a sudden that whole world opens up, and people get really creative. Like, oh, I can teach them to put essential oils on acupuncture points. I can teach them how to do moxa at home. I can teach them how to do cupping, right? All these cupping kits are there, like everything, it opens up. So, tation, contact needles,
Yeah.
like when you start thinking about this stuff and it's like, what do you want your world to look like around your work? So, I mean, we can kind of dig into that, or if you have something else you want to start with, because we will come back to this. I can't not talk about this stuff.
Well, this is exactly where I imagine this conversation going, because these are the conversations we've been having just, offline, because yeah, it's so important as a practitioner. You start to realize what's going well and what's not going well only after you begin your practice. You're never going to see that until you start practicing and you hit the hurdles and you keep falling over hurdles. So, yeah, I definitely want to get into that. But before we do, just to get a little background, I mean, did you think you were going to go into medicine as a child? What was your relationship with medicine as a child? How did you use it? Were there any cultural influences? And how in the world do you get into acupuncture and Chinese medicine?
Well, I don't want to project my experience, but like as a child, I mean, all I knew about going to the doctor was getting shots and hating that. And
Mm,
being a 4-year-old or 5, some of my earliest memories are screaming. And I was ferocious as a kid. Like it was like 4 or 5 nurses holding me down so they could shoot something in me. And, whether that's good or bad or whatever, there was something primal in me that sure as hell didn't want to be in that office doing that thing. And, that probably left a mark. I don't know. But later on, I do remember as a teenager, I was very inquisitive, right, with the doctor. I had a doctor in town. I lived in a very, very small town. I had like an older doctor who was really great and he was hilarious and stuff. And then he retired and then this younger guy came in and I got along with both of them. So I stayed in that office, but I would come there with anything. Like I was a teenager, I had like acne on my forehead, and I go into I'm like, I'm making my own doctor appointment, I was like, okay, it's like
sure.
1997 or whatever. I'm like, hello, with the phone, I'm like, hello, I'd like to come in, and so I get there. And I think the doctor, I mean, he was real patient, but I mean, boy, did I have questions, And I mean, he didn't have a half an hour carved out to answer all my questions about, so I'm saying things like, okay, well, I'm getting these things on my forehead, obviously like I'm a teenager, I don't like it, does this have anything to do with the food I'm eating? And he looks at me and he goes, are you rubbing your food on your face? And I said, well, no, And he goes, well, then how would it have anything to do with it? And I was like, I just kind of feel because I was eating trash, you know what I mean? Like
Right, right.
it was different back then too. I mean, the garbage wasn't even as bad as it is today, but it was still pretty bad. And it was so prevalent and we didn't know. So, I was eating all kinds of garbage and it's like, no, I'm not rubbing it on my face. But, that mental gap of the external and the internal, how could they possibly be connected, right? Like I saw up the skirt of reductionist thinking or behind the curtain or however you want to look at it. And I was just like, this is not good, it's bad, here we go. Okay. It's going to be,
Go for it. Go.
listen, first of all, I've got friends that are MDs. Like I know there's good doctors and good people. I know
Very
that.
good.
I'm
Yeah.
not going to shit all over the whole thing. I'm going to generalize though and say that oftentimes these lovely, wonderful humans are trying their best and they're stuck in a system that's not designed for any kind of next level. But also I think it's growing. Like I think a lot of these people in these positions are like paying attention. And I do think there's a lot of innovation happening. So I'm not going to totally take a dump on like all Western medicine. But what I will say is that for a long time, they rode on the ability to kind of white coat things
Mhm.
and be the middleman of knowledge and authority. And that's a cultural blip that's in that lineage of medicine. And I see it as actually like a relic of the priest class of being like, listen, there's a divine thing going on, but how could you ever possibly access it without me? You need me, right? I wear the wizard robe. I am the spiritual middleman, right? And I think some of that carried over into the medical, the conventional medical system. There's a bit of that kind of posturing that's just subconscious and inbuilt. At least
Yeah,
20, 30 years ago, it was still there.
absolutely. I experienced the same thing.
And I think if you have opaque authority and you're positioned that way, you can ride on a low level of systems thinking and not having to think about the future because people have to listen to you because they don't have any option. Right. But times are changing now. And like I said, I think a lot of doctors, like Western doctors, I think they're really getting hip to the fact that there's so much research and they're just like, whoa, the drugs we're using have downline side effects. It's cool to see some of this system kind of waking up. There's systematic incentives that are going to kind of kneecap some of that. they're big ones, but like in general, the humans I think are starting to kind of want more. And I also really like we're getting around the medical middleman in a lot of ways. Like you can go get your own lab tests.
Yeah.
Just as a
Yeah.
normal person, you can just go online and order some labs and be like, I want to know what my liver enzymes are or whatever. And you can go make an appointment and get a blood draw from a very friendly technician who does that all day long. And then in 2 days, it's in your email. And I'm not advocating this, but like you can then go research what that means for you. You can go
Absolutely.
use the internet, go use AI, go use whatever, and you can get a pretty good picture of what's going on. And of course, you're not diagnosing yourself, whatever else. But I mean, that spiritual middleman thing is getting bypassed left and right. So I think that's kind of cool because what that does is that forces the medical authorities to not be able to rely on that kind of power position. So they have to just get better. And
Absolutely.
it's good for everybody, really.
Yeah. So you saw that pretty early on. I mean, if you're in there in your teens, early 20s, being like, oh, I'm seeing right through this, I'm seeing through the veil, why do you even want to go into healthcare? Or did you not see acupuncture and Chinese medicine as healthcare at the time?
You ask me some hard questions, Haunani. I'll tell you, it's embarrassing, but I didn't know what acupuncture was good for. All right. So, like, if you look at your own mind and your own interests, there's different layers of reality where we have leverage. And one of those layers is like the methods or the things we're doing. So, this comes up for practitioners a lot of times because we're trying to do marketing, right? And so we market our things, our methods. We're like, hey, it's acupuncture. Hey, it's herbs. Let me tell you about gua sha, and that's real cool. But there are deeper levels to that. There's like 7 levels of this stuff that I've mapped out. And if you start going upstream of your methods, you'll start to find that they're only useful for people that have goals or problems, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
for the most part. So now it's like, okay, what's the goal or the problem? Okay, let me teach you about gua sha. Who cares? Okay, let me teach you how to get rid of those under eye puffy things you got going on and how to firm up your skin. I want to know about that. That's my goal or problem. Okay, now let's talk about gua sha, right? It's a method
Yeah.
attached to something deeper. So, I'm embarrassed to say a little bit, but I still tell this is that I went to acupuncture school. I had no idea about goals or problems. I was just very interested in the method. And that's it. I was like, this is so cool,
Yeah.
points. Wow. Energy lines. Cool. I grew up on Star Wars using the Force and watching the
Hmm.
Matrix and all this shit. I'm sure it influenced my subconscious, right?
Were you
And
also in martial arts too?
yeah, and that was
That,
part too.
yeah.
You see these things on the wall. It's like the picture on the wall and it's got the guy and it's like where to hit the person, for the point strike it or whatever. I'm like, oh, this is so cool. So, I didn't really know what it was useful for. And when, first week of school, one of the teachers said something like, everybody knows acupuncture is good for pain, but it's also good for digestive and whatever. And I was like, it's good for pain?
Love it. Total beginner's mind.
Total. Yeah. I mean, like embarrassingly, I was like, what did I think? Like, why was I, but sometimes when you're in those places, you got to just kind of follow that thread that pulls you and you got to you have a bit of faith, that even though you don't really know what the hell you're doing or why, there's something kind of pulling you there and you can follow it. And so I followed it, and stumbled through. And eventually I realized that, yes, it has actually a function. It's something that can help people. And I think a lot of practitioners kind of need to go through this and some already have. It's kind of natural, but like you move from really emphasizing the thing you're doing and then you focus more on the people you're helping.
Yeah.
Depending on your constitution, that may be a difficult thing or a super easy thing, for different people. But for me, that was one of the things where I was like, I was very interested in the things. I guess you'd probably say I was like pretty left brained, right? Like just focus. And then it's like the right brain side kind of picks up and it's like, oh my God, like there's intangible effects of my work going on
Yeah.
here. And you start to look and you go, oh, I'm like changing lives with this stuff. And that can be kind of weird too, because if you're so myopically just like an engineer, you're just like,
Right.
where's the point? What's the herb? But then you start seeing, I don't know, like a 80-year-old lady that can use her hands again. And you're like, whoa, that's an impact here,
Yeah.
and that can be hard too, depending on your psychology. Like if you're somebody who kind of likes to stay off the radar and kind of be outside of things, and then you realize that you're actually very connected to what you're doing. That can be hard too, but it's a growth point to embrace that and go, I am a part of a community. I'm not just somebody on an island somewhere, disconnected, just doing my things. And that for me, that was pretty cool because it brings me closer to the people that you're sharing space with on the planet, and you're showing up and you're doing very positive things. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff that we learn, I guess, if we're paying attention to this, of how limited our perception is, and if we kind of stick with this stuff, it'll start to open up.
Yeah. Do you think you started to have that realization in school? I mean, maybe this is where we can get into those training glitches, but school back in the early 2000s was focused on how to use the tool, right? Here are the tools,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
acupuncture, Chinese herbs, gua sha, cupping, all these things, no matter what you name them. And they were there to teach you how to use them, maybe some historical context, not a lot, and really how not to mess it up, right? Like how not to hurt people with these tools. So it was very tool
Yep.
focused.
It's a technician level training. Yeah.
Right. And then when did you start to see behind the veil of our schooling of, wait a minute, was it as an intern? Did you start to have that shift, or was it after you got out of school and started to see people?
Well, I don't know if this is a universal thing. I think it is, but for me, like as a student, I was going, okay, this is all fun and great, but for a limited time, I'm in this kind of safe and controlled environment. And
At
at some
school?
point, yeah, at some
Yeah.
point, I'm going to come out of this school bubble, and I'm going to be just out there in the world. And it's like eat what you kill, like you've got to have skills to like make this a viable business, make a living out of it. Everybody'd like to just be a barefoot doctor and just walk from village to village. And I don't know, they give you a chicken to eat or whatever. But that's not the society we live in for the most part. You got to have money and stuff's expensive. So for me, I was very interested in the logistics behind the techniques of how am I going to be able to create a career for myself where I have the luxury and privilege to be able to do this beautiful, graceful medicine I'm learning, right? Because at the end of the day, the bills have to get paid. You got to keep the
Yeah.
lights on or nobody's coming to your clinic, right? So you got to figure that stuff out. So for me, that was a leverage point, was to start to realize that there's a lot higher value in solving somebody's goal or problem than there is in delivering your technique.
Right. So go into that, because this also ties into what you were saying about how we market things. You're like, I
Yeah.
do acupuncture, I do Chinese medicine, but people, the public, even other medical professionals, even if they're integrative medicine or holistic, a lot of people don't know what acupuncture really does, how it works, or even what Chinese medicine is. And so when you say this is what I do, people glaze over.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and this is what those layers of reality and leverage kind of have to do with is being able to play a different game. I think a lot about radio stations and all these waves, like the internet, all this stuff, it's in the air all the time, right? But if we set the dial to one of them, we can grab onto that and we can have this dimensional experience of like, the music came on, right? And it's like, where was the music? Well, it's been in the air the whole time, you just couldn't see it until this, which is like magic, basically. Think about like how radio, yeah, like everything's in the air right now around us. Is just like, can we grab it or not?
Right.
And it has to do with the frequency matching and these kinds of things. So all these potentials are there to do a damn good job, right? However you want. I've got my own definitions of that. It's a matter of, can we tune into that and can we cultivate and ride that? And sometimes these different dimensions of experience, it's like once you kind of go into one, you go, oh my God, I can't believe I wasn't doing this the whole time.
Right.
And it's like there's more and more and more of that. So think about this, like a square is two-dimensional, right? And you can be coloring and you're like getting good at it and you finally colored in that whole square and you're like, great. And then you want to grow more and there's no more square. You already colored it in. So the next step is a cube. You've got to get out of that 2D thing. And so it's kind of the same thing where I don't want to say 100%, but it's like you get proficient with your methods. I'm not like, oh, I've mastered everything in Eastern medicine. That's ridiculous, right? But you can get like pretty good, and that square is pretty well colored in. So the place to grow now is in a different dimension. It's nothing to do with your methods anymore.
Yeah.
So now we're moving from things to people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. This was big for me because, I mean, if I'm going to be honest, growing up in a small town in upstate New York, I did not fit in there. And I spent a lot of time figuring out how to be outside the mainstream, right? The main group and getting comfortable there. But what that did was that taught me how to adapt by detaching, right?
Mm.
So this is kind of what I meant earlier. It's like other people may not have this. We've all got our own kind of patterns in our backgrounds, but you learn how to rebalance yourself in different ways. So for me, it was like detach from the people, focus on the things, right? And now you go to acupuncture school or whatever, and you're like, these things are awesome. I got it. And it's like, well, they're useless until you can connect with people. So fail or grow, right? And that's kind of the idea. And it's like, I'm so glad I did because my life is way more rich now, like to be able to engage with all kinds of people and to be able to help them in real ways. That's a different level of satisfaction than figuring out how to do a one-handed reload on a guide tube to learn like Japanese meridian therapy or something.
Sorry, I'm laughing so hard because like I have a visual of you back in the day of you sitting there in our kitchen being like, I'm gonna get this, I'm gonna get this,
Yeah.
like
Oh, I got
I'm gonna
it.
get this one-handed needle load,
But
Yeah,
that's the
no,
irony, right?
absolutely.
I
Yeah,
spent
yeah.
all that time drilling that skill, and then I learned how to outgrow the need for it Because if somebody's in Canada or the UK or whatever, I would plug them into my Modern Vitality program and I'd never need to do the reload. So this is what it is. You focus on the people and now you can help them in different ways that may surprise you. It may not be the methods that you thought or that you were attached to. And here's one I get in trouble for. This is one of my most controversial ideas that I put out, especially for the Chinese medicine community. But, you've got different tracks of education, right? Like some people go into Chinese medicine school and they learn the whole thing, like herbs, acupuncture, all that. And then they've also got this kind of acupuncture only track at some schools. I don't know how widespread it is, but there's a fair amount of practitioners that were like, I just want to learn acupuncture and I'm going to graduate, get a license. I'm going to do that. And they do that. And then they're working for a few years or whatever. And they're like, I think herbs would be helpful, for different reasons. I get these messages and people are like, I hate my school and I never want to deal with them for anything. I don't want to go back and take the herb course. It's like the school traumatized them or whatever.
Right.
And not every school's like that, but these are real messages people sent. And they're like, I want to learn herbs. So like I got TCM Weaver. It's this software. It's built, it's got the whole knowledge base in there and you can graphically mind map formulas and see all the differentials and all this stuff. So if you got a gnarly patient, you can look at their symptoms and what are all the formulas that go with that and know what question to ask. So people will say, oh, I didn't learn herbs in school. Can I just learn them from TCM Weaver? I'm like, that's like having every book open at once and it's great. But you got to have the understanding of how to navigate that information. It's not just having all the facts. You've got to understand the threads, which it's there, but it's like you still need to learn how to think about that. Not all herbs are equal. Not all herb formulas are equal. Some of them are really exotic and weird and made out of endangered species and never get used, right? Some of them have a tendency for toxicity and they don't get used very often. So we can take everything we know and we can start taking some of them off the table. And if you keep going like that, what are the 6, 12, 20 formulas that do the 80-20 heavy lifting, right? And you can look at that and go, okay, now which of these are like the safest, lowest amplitude things kids could take, things that are hard to overdose on? I got introduced to this kind of thinking a while back, and it really changed the way I was looking at herbs because it's not a flat hierarchy. There are certain formulas, depending on your practice style and the people you help, that you'll use way more often. And so for me, what if we take practitioners that already have a practice and we take the actual patients that you want to help with herbs and we put you in a group and you go, here's the case I'm looking at. Now you've got seasoned herbalists and you got my insane logic and based on all these parameters. And so now you're getting a practitioner who can start using herbs in a safe way without having to know everything about every formula because they're going off the people they're helping and it will be a safe, easy formula for that person to start using. And then it's like, you get your legs under you with some of these formulas like Shao Chai Hu Tong.
Exactly what I was thinking in my head when you said that. A formula 80-20, right? Like use it 80%.
Yeah, it's super balanced. It's good for modern times. We got a lot of hidden pathogens and phlegm and stuff like that. Like it's very helpful. Chronic conditions, kids can take it. You give people the guidance, or at least this is how I try to do. I guide practitioners who haven't really learned herbs into ones where they can stumble with them a little bit and it'll be okay. What I'm kind of getting at is this is a people first type of training where you don't go after all the things first, but you start with the people in front of you and go, how can I help this person better? Right. And then you've got a group of people around you going, oh, consider this, this, and this. And then when they come back with some crazy formula and they're like, well, I found this one in TCM Weaver and it's got like 6 different types of aconite in it and whatever else. And it's like, not that one.
Not that one. Yeah.
Slow down. Not that, not yet. Or, oh, it's got scorpions. I think it'd be good. Well, let's try something softer first. So some guidance, right? But it's a very small amount of people, but they sure are noisy. They hate that idea because they don't like the thought that some acupuncturist could learn herbs in a functional way without having to suffer whatever grueling thing they've attached value to that they experienced. And, I get it.
To be honest, we're all attached to, because I went through it this way. I want others in the future to have to go through it that way. You see, not just in Chinese medicine school either. I had conversation just recently with another medical doctor who said the same thing. Why are we doing it this way? But just because it's been done that way for so long doesn't mean it's the best or most effective for the 21st century. So I think what you're sharing, if any administrators or teachers out there, my brain would have learned herbs so much quicker if it was patient focused, rather than just memorize these categories and know all the different temperatures and the channels and meridians and all the things. That's just memorization, right? That's just turning you into an AI robot. But that doesn't do anything for the actual patient in front of you unless you know how to synthesize that information. And you can learn these herbs. You can learn these herbs when you say, here's a presenting patient.
Yeah. Well, that's what they aim to do it with case studies and then with the student clinic. That's kind of the idea. Oh, Eastern medicine school kind of patterns itself after Western medical school, right? And it's like this ever growing kind of tumor of requirements that needs to be, because they're incentivized for that. What incentive is there to have shorter programs that get?
That's so true. I mean, especially if you're getting federal funding, right? Like more money in
Yeah,
the
I mean,
pocket of a
it's
school, for
just a
sure.
matter of incentives. It's not good or evil. It's just like,
Yeah.
what are they
Yeah.
incentivize? So you got that, like, oh, let's pattern our education after Western medical education. Okay, well, is that a good idea? I don't know. There's pros and cons to it.
Mhm.
But then you also look at like the practice model and go, okay, well, what happened? How come the default for an acupuncture is like 1 hour appointment for X amount of dollars? What's this 1 hour thing? Well, we patterned after massage therapists and psychiatrists
Right.
and how they deliver their services. And it's like for acupuncturists, it's like we kind of almost put ourselves in the middle of that Venn diagram, and
Right. Right.
they're copied from other domains, which can be good. It's not a bad thing to think like that. But also we could get down to more of the first principles of it, of like what's actually required to do what we're trying to do. Is it an hour? Is it something else? That leads to a harder question, which is what is it you're trying to do?
Which is what we should be asking in the first place, right?
Yeah,
That
and
gets
that
back to the
evolves.
person. It's not about the technique. It's about, I mean, the school is there to make sure you're not messing up and hurting people. And that's the technique focus. But as a practitioner, as an intern, as a practitioner for 10, 20, 30 years, we should be asking that first, right?
Yeah. And it can be a hard question. I mean, I tell this story a fair amount, like within Actors Club, because it's very profound. But I had this period in my life where I would take Thursday morning walks with this good friend, very cool dude, wild guy, he's a force, and he's a little older than me. He's kind of like having a big brother that I'd never had. We'd take these walks every Thursday morning. I'd go wake him up. I'd just break into his house. Hey, it's Thursday. We'd make some tea and go for a walk. Just talk about all these depraved stories and all this bullshit. We'd laugh and laugh and laugh. But we'd go sit down at this bench. And when we sat down on the bench, that was always like a little more philosophical, kind of deeper conversations. And one of those days, he looked at me and he was like, "What do you do?" And I was like, "Acupuncture and herbs and stuff." And he's like, "No, what do you do? What do you do?" And I was so like stuck. I was squirmed on that question. And I was like, I don't know. I just put the needles in and like pattern diagnosis, whatever. And it was all in that dimension. It was all in that square. Right. And he wanted to have a cube conversation with me. He's like, you help people feel good. And I was
Right.
like, well, yeah, that's obvious. And it's like, well, was it? Because I sure wasn't saying it. Right.
Right, right, right. You weren't saying it as freely as you were, "Oh, I stick needles into people," so
Yeah.
it
I was living
wasn't
in
at the
method.
forefront.
Yeah, I was living in method land. So
Yeah.
there's, people land is a much richer place to be. And that was one of those little moments where, I was like, okay, I can't go back, after really getting blown open. So it's like, what do you do? What are you trying to do? If you want to build a practice model, what are you trying to do? And this is where the two types of excellence come in. I picked this up from a business mentor training where he was like, there's two types, there's business excellence and there's client excellence. You got to keep them both straight. And so if you imagine two columns, right? And like one of them is for your patients and what they're getting out of the deal, and the other one's for you and what you're getting out of the deal. There's the obvious stuff, like what do you get out of the deal is like you're running a business, so you're getting money, right? So now you can pay bills, you can feed your kids, you can whatever you want to do with money. The other side is what did the patients get out of it, or what do the clients get, or the members, or however you want to call the people you work with. And sure, they get pain relief. Let's stick with pain for now, right? Even somebody with like a disease, a condition like Lyme disease or something, right? It can have a lot of pain, fatigue, brain fog, right? What do they get? Well, they get the symptoms to go down. But why? Why does that matter? Well, it depends what those symptoms were taken from them that they now are getting back. You don't need long. If you don't feel good, it doesn't take long before you start shrinking. And you go, I can't do this, I can't do that, I got to be careful with this, whatever. And now you're doing different things differently. You're kind of capping your world. This is known. This is why like pharmaceutical commercials for IBS medicines and stuff like that, they really hammer that, because it's like I saw one where this woman was trying to like go somewhere and she just kept like imagining a toilet everywhere, and it's like your whole world now revolves around being able to get to the bathroom, right? You're shrunk. It's like that with everything. So, being able to do the things that you want to do again. But like, why does that matter? And it's like, okay, well, now it's because my identity was getting messed up because I was sick and I was identifying as being sick and having pain and not being able to do things. I was identifying as being weak. I was identifying as being a burden to my family. I was identifying as just all the noise, right? And you can go deep, deep, deep into this stuff unless
And
you
it's real. And it's real as a patient. It's real.
Well, it's very real. Yeah.
I've been there too, and I see it all the time. So yeah, absolutely. That shrinking of not just your world, but it's your mentality. Everything starts to get really hyper focused on this
Yeah.
thing in your life.
It runs you.
Yeah.
So when you start looking at the herbs are helping and like the person has more energy and they're sleeping better and whatever else, but it's like deeper now, we're setting them free from that demon that's kind of grabbed their consciousness. What this disease or condition or whatever pattern, whatever it is, has done to them, it's hijacked part of their self. And you help people kind of chip back at that and set themselves free. So when you start looking at that and you go, okay, well, what am I going to optimize for then? 1 hour appointments or setting people free?
Right.
And I know there's somebody listening who thinks I'm going to say, so have 2 hour appointments. You can set them free more. Like, no,
That's
you
not the
might be
point.
able to get rid of appointments entirely.
Yeah.
And this is something that really got me thinking about that business excellence, client excellence kind of thing. And for me, honestly, I don't want appointments. I don't. This can become a really cool thought exercise that I'll expand on in just a sec. But like, we assume we have to have appointments because that's what we patterned after.
Well, that's what we were taught.
Yeah.
Patterned after because we were taught that.
Yeah. So, now that the internet's really swinging, we don't need to be synchronous with people. We can be asynchronous, right? And once you get over the fact of any resistance to like putting yourself out there or like, I don't like how I look on camera or whatever, and you start making assets of videos and explaining things, because so much of our leverage is actually education for the people we're working with. Education and empowerment kind of go hand in hand, right? So you start educating people and you start doing it in a way where you don't have to repeat yourself all the time, saying the same stuff over and over. Hey, make sure you keep your neck warm. Hey, make sure you don't drink cold drinks. Hey, make sure you don't wear bare feet on your floor. I know it sounds like trivial and like common sense to us because of course people know to wear a scarf. They don't. They don't understand how much lymphatic action is in their neck. They don't understand. They don't understand what wind does to the human body. Like they don't know. It sounds like common sense to us, but it's not common sense for most people. And even people who do have it as common sense, it's not common practice. So having education is super important for that kind of stuff. So the escalation of thought is like, okay, well, if education is so important, why don't I create a digital clone to do that? Where for me, every video I've made, I'm having a really good day and I'm explaining things clearly, and that's now recorded. Right. Which is the crazy thing. Cause like I've said this before, but it's like if you wanted to call me up at 3 a.m. and have me explain something about your health to you, you would not get a good answer. Right. Cause I would be grumpy, but you could go on my YouTube at 3 a.m. and there I am, chipper and ready to talk. You got the best of me 24 hours a day. Right. Go nuts. I'll be asleep. So this is the future. Anyway, you start looking at that and go, okay, I want to start to leverage the information and the knowledge I have so that my digital clone can do a lot of this heavy lifting. And it's like this person can have an excellent experience because they're getting a very good video and a good explanation that I'm not always going to be at the top of my game, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm having an excellent experience because I'm SLEEPing while the person is watching that video, right? So anytime you can make a change in your practice model or what you're doing, and you can check both of those columns, better working relationship for the person, better experience for you, do it. Right. And so sometimes that means breaking out of the models we've inherited.
Yeah. And what really stands out to me is how practical this is. And I guess I get this because I understand the value of videos and recording, and I got over that personal hump. It really takes a while to recognize what are the things you're saying over and over and over and over again to your patients. And all of that takes time. Every appointment takes time and money. And I learned this from you. This was a huge aha moment when I realized I could just take the most frequent things that I am asked in a clinical setting and just put it in a video. It's in the FAQs, it's in a video, and every new patient has access to these certain videos. And then patients or practitioners and people who don't even know you, especially if it's on YouTube, can access it. And some people come to you because they said, you explained this to me in such a way I'd never understood before, and now I want to come and see you, or now I want to work with you. So it can also end up being marketing as well as patient tools, which is now you're double dipping. Now you're multitasking.
Yeah, you're starting to tap into my secret sauce here is like have things do double duty. Here's a pretty cool progression is you take that experience bank of like, what are the things I wish everybody knew that was in my practice that I don't have time to tell them at the appointment? And if I did tell them, they just got acupuncture and they're high as a kite and they're not going to remember anyway.
Right.
Let's be honest. Like, a lot of times we're doing patient education and it's for us, not them. We want to tell ourselves at the end of the day, like, look at me. I educated my patients. Like I'm going above and beyond and this stuff's so interesting. And the patient is wasted and not retaining the stuff. Right. And I know that's
Well, especially after a treatment.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, it's like
Never
a
tell anyone. I mean, it took me years to figure this out, but I used to always wait till the end of the appointment to do the patient education. And now I do it all at the beginning. No one remembers. I mean, I'm a patient too, so I don't remember anything my acupuncturist says after the needles are out.
There's definitely something to kind of lowering the conscious mind's chatter and then giving, like, some people do hypnosis and things like that. So it's like you can give like a suggestion into the subconscious, like that's not really my wheelhouse. So I don't want to say like never talk to your patients, but if you're doing some kind of hypnosis thing where you want them in a certain state and
Mhm.
then you've got these implant ideas you're doing and they're more receptive, I get it. But if you're trying to tell somebody like, well, here's the 3 stretches for sciatica that I want you to do. You know, that would be way better as a video because they're gonna forget, they're gonna misremember, which is the other one, and they come in and you're like, "Oh, have you done those stretches?" And they're like, "Yeah, it doesn't work, it hurts." And you're like, "Oh, show me what you're doing." And they're doing some crazy Cirque du Soleil thing that you never ever showed them. This would be way better if it was recorded. So that's the progression. You start with that and go, okay, what are these things I wish all my patients knew that I don't have time to tell them in the appointments? And let's start recording it. Let's make like a little patient portal or something like that where they can kind of get into this. Guess what's next is now instead of the things, which again, education is a thing. So now we got to tie it back to the people and the problems they have. So maybe you make a program. I mean, I'm saying this hypothetically, like it's not exactly what I did, but maybe you make a program that's for fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome, all the gnarly autoimmune stuff. And now that's something that patients pay for because it's valuable. And it's tailored to
Yeah,
their issue and their goal,
absolutely.
right? So now you can bundle these really cool hybrid offers. And I was doing this in like 2019 for high ticket membership hybrid offers. So a new patient would come in, and if they fit, like you've got this kind of condition with fatigue, brain fog, random pains, all the other stuff that goes with that, digestive issues, anxiety, libido stuff, whatever. You have Lyme or you have fibro or mold or whatever it is, you fit this program. It includes X amount of acupuncture treatments and it includes the whole program and it takes you through stages of healing with herbs and all this kind of stuff. And you get these people who are coming to your brick and mortar for a method and they would realize that you're actually there to solve their problem and help them with their goals. And that changes the financial valuation on what it is you do. But more importantly, it changes the energetic valuation because now they're in. You're taking people who are highly motivated and committed and you're putting them in a container, for lack of a better word, an environment where they can deep dive into the relevant information you have, plus you're there hands on. Practitioner excellence, one of those things is like not burning out. So one of the ways we burn out,
So yeah,
wasting our breath or feeling like what we're doing doesn't matter. There's power there we have. If we don't know it's there, we won't grab it. But basically, we can create environments where we're filtering for people who are motivated, committed, willing to do what it takes, people who will listen to you, value your advice, all those things that create a fulfilling work life so that you don't burn out.
right.
And it doesn't mean you don't treat anybody else, but you know who these people are because they're in longer term programs and they're getting better and you're getting this long term relationship and they're not coming for 2 or 3 visits and then just ghosting out, you know? So you can have a general practice and combine that. So there's the progression. It's like
Yeah,
patient education is important. Record it, right? You got a bunch of recordings, sell them, right? And now it's
right.
valuable. And then the
Yeah,
next step is like taking that once that program can stand on its own, now it's online and you don't need to do acupuncture on anybody because they're coming from the EU, the UK, Canada, Australia, wherever, and all over America. And you can sign people up into a program that's highly education based and then just drop ship them herbs or
yeah.
manage inventory if you want. It's really rad. I mean, it's a
Yeah,
cool.
no, that's incredible to go from this idea because you did the brick and mortar. It's not like you came out of school and went straight to online. We didn't have that
We didn't
luxury,
have
or
that.
maybe we did. We didn't know we had that luxury. It took some time in really going through the practitioner journey to realize you can still be an incredible practitioner, whichever your field is, and still serve your community in meaningful ways. And I think that's really, really powerful message to hear because, I teach practice management and the model still is, well, how are you going to practice when you get out? And it's still pretty brick and mortar based.
Well, yeah, that's
So to
what's
be,
known, and
yeah,
there's
right. So
nothing
this
wrong with it.
educational glitches, coming back to
Yeah.
educational glitches, I'm even thinking of, make sure I need to go back through my slides and make sure I have a conversation about, well, how are you going to go online? Have any of you thought about going online? Right? Because that's what I hear you saying is you went from brick and mortar to now you're fully online.
Yeah.
You're making an impact.
Well, yeah, I know we were chatting kind of before we started recording, but like as of today when we're doing this, and this may change in the future, but I've basically paused Modern Vitality because I've been focused with Doctors Club. So what happened was practitioners were asking me like, oh, because they see me making all the noise about Modern Vitality, and they're like, oh, well, what are you doing? This is interesting. How you're using herbs in kind of a fun and somewhat strange way. Having like stages and stuff, and I want to learn that. Okay, well, you're also going to want to learn how to run the online business part, because once you can see herbs in this way, you can take it on. There's nothing stopping you. So I just started mentoring practitioners, and that was one of the reasons why we moved across the country. And I left my brick and mortar in very, very good hands in Washington, but now we live in South Carolina, and I didn't open up a brick and mortar here. And that was like 2.5 years ago. And normally when you move across the country, it's like, oh shit, I better get an office going. Like, I got to build it, whatever. And I kind of took it as a challenge. I was like, I want to work just 100% online, so that I can kind of, I don't know that I need to do this, but I guess I wanted to like prove that it's possible to not have a brick and mortar, and still make a living. So I do want to have a brick and mortar here. It's probably about time to get one started. I like it. I like having my hands on the people in the community and all that, but it's going to be my terms. It's going to be, 1 or 2 half days a week. And that's that. I'm talking like,
Yeah.
couple 4-hour shifts max. Because that's the trap. You get a brick and mortar and then it gets successful. And then you go, I can't take a vacation. It's too expensive not to be in the office. I'm not falling into that. My brick and mortar is just going to be like extra. We're planning on doing a lot of location independent things like this summer and all that. And it's like, if I want to go camping in a van for 6 weeks, I'm not going to beat myself up about it. It's just like, it's not really lost income. It was bonus in the first place. You know what I mean? Like, it's a different mindset. So some of the resistance that I've noticed with practitioners of trying to work online is this kind of concept of like, how can I help somebody if they're not in my physical space?
Ooh, that's a big mental hurdle.
Yeah. So it's like, well, here's a problem that a lot of practitioners have that I've heard is, I can't get my patients to take herbs. My patients won't take herbs, right? And it's like, okay, that's a belief that you have, and it may be true so far, but my patients would take herbs, and lots of other people's patients take herbs, and some people only do herbs and their patients take herbs. So is there something special about all your patients, or is there something going on with you that's not
Mm.
letting that happen? Right. So we start to dig into that, and it's like, I don't have a lot of confidence in herbs, or I took herbs one time and I didn't like them, or I feel like I can only give a formula if I've had it myself. And it's like, well, why would you take every herb? You're not going to have a good experience. You know what I mean? So there's a lot. I know it sounds funny, like we're kind of,
Thinking like, can you imagine your medical doctor, like your allopathic doctor being like, well, I'm not going to give you this high blood pressure medication because I've never taken it before.
I
Like,
know.
it's
Yeah.
just like, that's a joke to even think
Yeah.
about.
It's totally.
But I can totally see how that, yeah, I can see how that happens.
Yeah, I mean, we're laughing, but that's how like every limiting belief in
Yeah.
hindsight, we can
It's
laugh
so
at all of
true.
them. Like when I was
That's so
sitting
true.
on that bench going, I don't know what I do. I do acupuncture. Like how silly. So yeah, I'm laughing at everybody's limiting beliefs, but I laugh at my own too. And I've had them as well. I used to have that with herbs too. Anyway, so there's a belief, and you can look and go, okay, well, my patients don't take herbs, right? Well, everybody else's do. A, it's possible and proven. And B, it's going to require some digging into your own self to figure out what's going on. Are you open to that? And it's the same thing with working online. Oh, how could I help somebody if they're not in my treatment room? That's impossible. Well, I'm doing it. The people I'm training are doing it. So it's not like everybody on the internet won't be helped. I mean, it's like
Right.
you got to upskill yourself. You got to learn how to navigate that. And it is a different skill level. It's going from a square to a cube, or from a cube to like a tesseract, fourth dimensional crazy. It,
Yeah,
it,
yeah, yeah.
it gets weird, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But that's the reality of it, is that a lot of times we don't know what we can't see. And then when we see other people doing it, we tell ourselves why we can't. And that's just normal ego stuff. There's a certain level of like, well, if they can do it, I can at least try. And that's a different attitude. And once you have that, then you start realizing that, I mean, one of the practitioners in our group, she's got somebody in Australia that's, you know, never met me, never gonna meet me, but like I've changed her life like radically just from videos. And she's like, how is this even possible? I'm going, this is the crazy thing. We underestimate the ability of education, and probably even more importantly, the connection and the community around that education to make an impact.
I think it's really interesting to think about this out of the practitioner excellence. What you're really talking about is to be open to having a self-growth mindset.
You have to. I mean,
You
how would
have
you?
to. I'm thinking back to my younger self going through school. I thought I had self-growth mindset. But how interesting is it that sometimes your self-growth mindset is just perpetuating the same patterns, but focusing it on a different tool. So now I'm taking my limiting beliefs, and it used to be in making money as a waiter in the restaurant industry. And then I go to Chinese medicine school, and I'm going to up level, and I'm thinking different, and my paradigm is different. And yet I still bring in those limiting beliefs that keep me in that square.
Yep.
And it takes
Yeah, you're
someone
totally in a
like
different
you who
square.
thinks
Yeah.
differently than me, right? This is why we were always in engaging conversations, is because if you have someone to kind of check where your own ego is stuck or where your own limiting beliefs are stuck, and not take it personally. That's a big thing. It's so easy to take it personally if you're not used
Yeah.
to that.
That's
But if you're
upsetting.
willing to say, you're right, you're seeing it differently than I do, tell me more, then you're in self-growth mindset and you can change your practice and you can move from the tools, the acupuncture, the Chinese medicine, and now you're moving into strategy. How are you going to use those tools to really serve the people?
Yeah. And just a
Yeah.
quick note, like I got a lot of out of our conversations as well back then. You probably don't know, but I was
That's
more
good to hear.
restless and angry and pushing against the whole world. And you were a very you know, yogi person. And I was like, okay, how is she peaceful? What the fuck is going on? You know, we invented podcasting. Did you know that?
What? We did?
I mean, we didn't do a very good job at it, but I remember we used to, because we had that house in Ocean Beach,
Yeah.
and we got like I found a couch somebody was getting rid of, and I would like drag the couch up on the front porch, right? So we'd sit out on that couch outside, and we'd have these long talks, and they were so cool, like all this philosophy and all the stuff we were learning in Chinese medicine school and all this, and then we started recording them.
We
I don't
did?
know,
I don't
yeah,
remember
recording 'em.
recording them.
But this is like 2006, and we were like,
Right.
we got to do something with this. These are great conversations. We should at least record them. I'm sure they're gone now, but yeah, if
Yeah.
podcasting was a thing, we probably have been podcasting 20 years ago. We used to have some really ripping philosophy chats on that porch couch.
I know. What did those walls hear? Like we were thinking so far out the box. Yeah. And that was a very interesting time. We used to do things that people would just stare at us and
Well,
be
yeah,
so
that's exactly
confused
it.
by our freedom.
We have to you've got to kind of work to maintain that freedom, and this is one of the things that I have a lot of gratitude about this, because I've been fortunate enough, I've been persistent enough in my efforts to keep learning how to do this, to have a lifestyle where I'm not a slave to the calendar and I can still do all that same weird stuff. I had to build it, and this is part of the whole doctors club thing, is like not everybody wants to get rid of their brick and mortar, but you should know it's possible if you want to. You don't
Yeah.
have to. Keep it, do a hybrid thing, but you got to command your schedule, because what happens is we'll subtract from practitioner excellence to feed patient excellence, right? Early on. So we'll bend over
Yeah.
backward
You'll
in
bend over back. There's
all
no
these weird ways.
boundaries.
Yeah, and a lot of times it's not worth it, and a lot of times we start to get a little more brave, and we try not doing that, and we realize things actually work out better. So one example would be, I'm going to make my prices as low as possible. I'm going to just like take a hit and make it better for the patients. Sometimes that's true, but they don't want you poor and starving. They want you to be financially stable and secure, so that they know you're still going to be there in 6 weeks to help
Can
them.
you say that again? Because I think this is so mind blowing for so many people in the healing arts. This concept that the lowest price isn't somehow better for the patient. Will you go into that?
Yeah. Okay. So I read a quote a long, long time ago by Seth Godin, who's like a business guy, and he said, I'm going to butcher the quote, but the trouble with the race to the bottom is you might win,
Absolutely.
right? And so that stuck with me. A lot of these things are, it's acts of faith. You have to put yourself out there in a way and have a belief that it's going to come back and everything's going to be okay, right? So if you're running a business, you're a leader, whether you know it or not. You're an entrepreneur. A lot of practitioners don't realize that they're entrepreneurs. They don't realize it's a business. We want to pretend it's not. We want to be a healer. It's not either or. You can be a healer and be running a business, and you can be running a business
Absolutely.
and being a leader. You can do all these things. And just to pretend that some of it's not happening, it doesn't serve you and it doesn't serve the patients. And this is stuff I had to figure out too, because I wasn't always acting like a leader. I was trying to act like a healer all the time, or who knows what I was trying to do. So that's kind of one of those things, like if you don't run your business, it'll run you, that kind of idea. So if we think only in the short term, we're going to wind up with long-term pain. And
In
if
our
we think,
practice, pain in our practice.
yeah, in the practice, in life, whatever, I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah, that's true.
if we do things, a lot of times there's a trade-off. We have short-term benefits and then we have to pay for it in the long term. And it's the other way too. In the short term, to build up an online program, it's a lot of talking to your phone and recording yourself, and it feels silly and it feels like a waste of time. But the long term is, now you've got this asset that if you know how to nurture it and how to position it, sky's the limit, right? Same thing with writing a book. In the short term, you're just sitting there in a room tapping buttons. What a silly waste of time, right? The best book you ever read that changed your life was somebody sitting in a room tapping buttons, right? Short-term suffering, long-term benefits. So a lot of times, to be able to think long-term, it requires a bit of an act of faith, because the short-term might be kind of weird, you know? So if you go, oh, I'm out of school, all right, I got to eat, and you're in hungry ghost mode and you're like, whatever he's charging in my area, I'm going to take it down even 10% below that. I'm going to make it like really affordable. Then people want to see me, right? And in the short term, that takes the gremlin off our back of like, you're going to fail. That gremlin, it's quieted down because you're like, I won't fail. It's the cheapest thing. Everybody wants cheap, right? Long term, you're the cheapest one. And how long for? Until the next person with a hungry ghost mind comes in and undercuts you, and then you got to undercut them. So there's this saying that price is a very weak differentiator, because we think it's going to differentiate us, but it's one of the weakest ones to use.
That's a
There are
great
other ways
quote.
to differentiate yourself in the market. And if you have differentiation, now you've got people drawn to you. So it's not about having the lowest price, it's about having a strong differentiator or multiple of them. And people probably going to want to know what I mean by differentiator. This is a lot of the Doctors Club kind of stuff. We really tear into these things. And the short of it is like, your differentiator is what makes you different in the market and more appealing to certain types of people. And those differentiations can come technically, like, well, I'm the only one who does Japanese acupuncture in this town, or I'm the only one who does acupuncture at all in this town. Like, they're method level differentiations. They can also come in the intangibles, like your presence, So eventually you want to get to where you can look in the mirror or talk to the internet and you can say, there is nobody who does what I do the way I do it.
Yeah.
And just know that and feel it, because the logic mind is one thing. The logic mind is what tells us we have certainty and tries to make us feel comfortable. But the feeling part of our mind, when we feel that, you're bulletproof,
Yeah.
you know? But you got to get to that felt sense. And then the next part, you don't have to always say this, but the next part is be able to articulate exactly what you mean. What do you mean nobody does what you do the way I do, the way you do?
Mm-hmm.
I've got a list. You don't want to hear it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you do these kind of thought experiments, and barely any of that has to do with price, because in fact, the more you can say nobody does what I do the way I do it, guess what happens to your price, your value?
Yeah, I was going to say, this is a conversation of price versus value. And I think a lot of people mix them up or think they're the same, but they're not. You're
Yeah.
talking about value.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's like with the price thing, it's not about like grabbing every nickel off every single person all the time. But since you kind of pinged off this, I will say your patients don't want you to be poor, right?
It's
They're
so true.
coming to you for help. They want you to be there for them long term, medium.
And their families.
Yes.
Yeah.
They want you to be a part of the community that's not going anywhere. They want that stability. They need you there, which means you can't undercut your own self. You can't commoditize yourself. You can't do all this martyr shit, even though there's a little voice going, yeah, look at me. I suffered, so I must be a holy person. Like, you got to shut that down, because you're ultimately, it's a very selfish thing to do. You're not going to be there for the people that need you, and they want you to be there. And you can charge money, you should, for your services, because you need to be there. I mean, it's like what it comes down to. So that's survival, is just be able to charge appropriately. Now, like, thriving is going, okay, like, can we get some higher ticket things? Can we get people bought in on longer term memberships or programs or whatever, because that's what it's going to take? Sometimes your offers kind of imply the frame for people. And what I mean by that is, if you sell visit by visit, right, and somebody comes for a consultation, and then what are they going to say? You tell them a visit is $100 or whatever for a follow-up, and what are they going to say? How many follow-ups?
Yep. That's the next question. How many times do I have to come up?
Right? Yeah,
Come in.
that's natural and that's normal, right? But what I'm telling you is that the belief behind that question is that they're thinking in terms of visits and follow-ups. They're still thinking in terms of your methods, because that's how you framed it. They're not thinking in terms of what's it going to take for me to get better.
Right.
So it's kind of crazy, because people are asking important questions. And I know the other end of this is like, if I have a problem, I want to know what's the solution look like? How much is it going to cost? How long is it going to take? These are normal questions. What I'm getting at is kind of an advanced thing, but it's like the frame of how you offer things, visit, 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 visit. It's like little Lego bricks, and the person wants to know how many Lego bricks. Or you
Yeah.
could just sell them the Lego set.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, you're trying to
Until it's
build
built.
the castle thing with the horse
Yeah.
on it or whatever. Like, you don't sell it brick by brick. You look at the goal and you go, okay, here's what it's going to take to get that goal together. So it's not necessarily a visit, visit, visit. And this is kind of one of the crazy things, because your offers can change, where you have an annual membership and it includes up to X amount of acupunctures throughout the year or per month. And the person's like, how many visits is it going to take? And it's like, listen, it takes as many as it takes. And when you are framed in this way, you've already kind of like prepaid, the financial part's out of the way.
Yeah.
We've done that. And now it's really a matter of just doing the actual work. We don't have to think about money every time you come in. That's handled and done. And now I don't have to administer that, focus on that. No receptionist, nothing. It's just like one time done. We've taken payment, handled. Now we can focus on what actually matters for you is like, what's it going to take to get you better? So I kind of like the all inclusive thing. It's like a concierge type model, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely. And, just the practitioners I know making the most money are the ones who do this model, thinking, well, we're going to work until your problem's solved, rather than one by one by one by one.
Right.
The
You have to
practitioners
think,
who think that way, they're not worrying about money. They're not worrying if their practice is going to stay open
no, not at all.
because
So
they're
there's different
solving
ways.
people's, they're helping to be part of a person's care team until it's done.
Yeah. And even packages are still selling visits, but it's at least a bigger amount of visits and it gets people thinking in a longer term. And that's basically
Yeah.
what I'm getting at is like if you have every offer is short term, like the one visit, next visit, this visit, it encourages a short term mindset. It's implicit, it's subconscious, but it's in the culture around your work that you don't even know you're establishing. And they pick up on that.
This reminds me of, I had this aha moment in the orthodontist office about a year ago. I was taking my
If you
son
want to
in.
learn high ticket sales, you go see those.
Right? No,
Yeah.
that's exactly what I had. I was like, we went in for a 15-minute consultation. I saw the doctor for maybe 2 minutes. I saw all these other helpers in between. At the end, they sit me down. They say, phase 1 is going to take approximately so many months. And phase 1 is for this particular course of care is going to be, $3,600. It's like, okay, if it takes longer, do we pay more? Nope. But this is phase 1. You get treatment until phase 1 is done. Phase 1 is this price. And that was it. We were in and out in 30 minutes. I was like, mind blown open. I was like, can I replicate this as an acupuncturist?
Yes.
Yes. I knew you were going to say this.
Yeah, of course. I mean, that's what we're doing. You got to be willing to think about that stuff. So we've copied from psychotherapy and massage therapy.
Yeah.
You can look at other industries. You can look at orthodontics as ways to do it. You can look at all kinds of stuff. Like lawyers have retainer models. Maybe you want to have a retainer that's kind of like selling a package.
Yeah.
There's lots
That
of ways to
concierge
do it.
model. Yeah.
Yeah, there's lots of ways to do it. For me, I discovered this distinction a long time ago, and it served me very well, is the difference between financial and social relationships. So financial or transactional. I'll use transactional relationships is like fee for service. Like every time something happens that I do that delivers patient excellence or client excellence, they have to pay for that. It's fine. The downline problems are the incentives and what it encourages. So the whole insurance system is built on transactional relationships. It's built on basically practitioners that at a baseline don't have to care. I'm not saying they don't care, but caring is not required to come in and deliver the service. It's not a requisite, right? Because they're being paid per transaction. The other thing that happens then is that the providers are incentivized to pad the bill with a bunch of stuff. So the example I like to use for this is in acupuncture. I've got heat lamps. I like to put the infrared on the patients. If I'm doing it transactionally, every time I turn on a heat lamp, that's supposed to be $5, billing the insurance, some little thing, right? And if we have a transactional relationship, the person on the table never knows if I turn that heat lamp on so I could get $5 or because I want their feet to be warm. They will never know, right? But if I go, I'm not billing for heat lamps. You're just here and I want to take care of you, then they never have to ask.
And then it's never even subconsciously in the back of their mind.
Never
yeah.
even there.
It totally changes the rapport and the healing environment and
that's it.
Really the outcomes.
And there's two things people will pay for is results and relationships. And if you can provide both, you're golden. So I don't like shit eating away at my relationships like that. And if it means I had to lose $5, I could have billed, boy, if I was billing insurance, I don't give a flying fuck about the $5. That's the relationship tax I would have to pay to collect that $5 undermines my whole thing. Right. So now imagine that with everything, not just heat lamps. So for example, like running Modern Vitality, it's like online chat group. Somebody comes in with a question. Do I charge them per character of my answer? And that incentivizes me to draw it out and make it long. That's what billing insurance is.
Right.
Instead, it's like we've got a membership. It's got a start date and it's got a renewal date. If you like what's happening, you want to stay, there's a renewal point. If not, if you're either healed or this wasn't for you or didn't get you where you wanted, at least it was worthwhile or not. So we've got a container of time. And within that time, ask away.
Yeah.
Let me just take care of you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now all that transactional stuff's off the table. And the paradox there is that you make more money.
A lot more money, honestly.
Yeah. And so like practitioner excellence is there. The income's handled. because you're attracting the types of people that's appealing for. And those people are operating on a different level. They want the care. They want the long-term thing. They want you to be there. Not everybody needs that. Not everybody wants that. And there's plenty of people that don't fit that model. And that's okay. You can help them in other ways, or you can refer them or whatever. It's not like an exclusive thing.
It's an automatic no if it's not even an option.
Yeah, no patient ever came to me and was like, the sign says acupuncture on the building, but I was hoping you could create an online program for me and we could just handle all my questions. They're not going to come to you with this stuff. So when we do it, we put it out there, we go, well, here's an option. So these things can be done. And it's really, really cool because at the end of the day, your risk of burnout goes down substantially because you're not worried about money, which everybody wants to be like spiritually developed and all that. But I'll tell you, so much of spiritual growth is learning how to handle your own fear. Right? What's one of the biggest fears is
Amen. Yep, absolutely.
money fears. So
Yep.
get some cash flow, like get some money. And then now you don't have so much brain bandwidth just torn up on existentialism. Like, am I going to make it? I get it. Everybody has slow months and things. I've had it. I'm sure I'll have it again. It goes in waves. But if you've got systems and offers, it can become more anti-fragile and accommodate downswings and things. So, get some money. People don't like to hear this, but this is the world we live in. I saw a stick of butter for $8 in the grocery store in Podunk, nowhere, South Carolina. Things are going up.
Yeah, yeah.
Get some money. How do you get money? Well, you don't go after the money. You provide value, results, and relationships. Do everything you can to make sure that you're giving great results and great relationships. So the clinical clarity, kind of like architecting out how you think about cases so you're not guessing about things and it's not random, that helps with the results part. And sometimes the way you run your business can just set a different floor for the relationships. Like I said about the heat lamp, it's that kind of thing.
Yeah, I love this. The word collective mentorship keeps coming in mind when I think of the work you're doing with Damn Good Doctors Club. Does that resonate with you? Is that kind of what's going on? It's like a group of healthcare practitioners, not just Chinese medicine practitioners or acupuncturists, contributing to the collective answers?
Yeah, I'm going to say yes on that. Here's what happens. There's different kinds of leadership, right? One type of leadership is like somebody gets to have a certain level of understanding. They become a guru or a talking head, and they get sat on the top of the pyramid. They're the eyeball on the pyramid, and all the people underneath them are dependent on them. Is this making sense?
Yeah.
If I'm
This is a basic hierarchy model.
Basic hierarchy, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's normal for our culture and what people tend to fall into. I'm a big fan of the come here, let me show you type of leadership. And there's another one above that I like even more, which is the problem never happened because I architected the circumstances ahead of time to prevent it. That leader, nobody pats them on the back because nothing happened. But that's like the Taoist stuff. That is sweet because you know what you did and you know the problems that you're not having. Like right now, I don't have any problems with patients missing appointments because I got rid of appointments. Like,
right.
all these
but
things.
You're still helping people at the same time. I think that's going to blow some people's mind. Wait, you have 0 missed patients, and yet you're still a practitioner helping people. That is a mind bend.
It is. It's real trippy. I mean, you gotta be willing to think differently with this stuff. But not everybody wants to do it. Some people want to keep appointments. Great, you can do that. You can do that in my world. It's just like, let's reinforce some of the other stuff you have and shore up different skill gaps or whatever. But the thing about the leadership piece is that if you're attached to being the eyeball on top of the pyramid, then every time somebody under you gets better, it's a threat.
Including your patients.
Yeah.
Including other practitioners in your same community.
You're going to outgrow me. You're going to not need me. Right?
That's eye-opening.
Yeah. But this is also the thing we talked about in the beginning. This is the white coat kind of thing. It's a threat, So they have to grow as leaders in different ways. You can't just put yourself as the spiritual middleman or the eyeball on top of the pyramid. I've known some people that are very smart in a lot of ways, but make huge mistakes by trying to micromanage the people around them and trying to control network effects, like squeezing water in their hand and expecting there's going to be more of it when they open. Like, you can't micromanage this stuff. So what I've done with Doctors Club is I've got filtering. So there's certain types of practitioners that do really well in the environment I've created. And so I filter for them. And it's not a fit for everybody. And that's okay. And I understand. And that's fine. But what I will say is the people I've filtered for are very forward thinking. Nobody's perfect, right? We're all growing and learning, but you get people that are focused on something and they dive into their niche or their field of study. Kindness is like a cultural prerequisite, right? So what I wind up with is I can't be the guy at the top of the pyramid trying to like contain everybody. So instead, my whole thing with this, you talk about collective mentorship, right? That's a good way to put it, is to, instead of that, I'm more like the conductor of the symphony. I don't have to be like, blowing your flute this way. I want to set the coherence, the rhythm, the tone,
Yeah.
and I'm there when they need help. But for the most part, like I want the people to shine. They have their solos and the times where they're emphasized, and some people need help. And I've decentralized myself in this organization so that when you come in there, there's a ton of different practitioners that all have different vantage points. But people get help from each other. They're always doing calls. I mean, people live across the planet. And I just yesterday, I think it was 2 people that got together and real life for a hike. Like I really encourage all this like nonlinear network stuff. But when people do have their own little kind of idiosyncrasies, there's like, going to be 3 or 4 people that are just drawn to help that person. Kind of why I'm digging into this so hard is because I'm talking about Doctors Club and like professional training. And because you said about collective mentorship and that happens. So I'm letting the flow of this thing happen and I love it. But you can do the same thing with the people you help, whether you call them patients or members or clients or whatever, because I was doing that with Modern Vitality. It was the same thing. So when you've got somebody coming in, this has got to click. Like when you've got somebody coming in who has Lyme disease and they're bedridden and they're just totally trashed and they were hopeless until they kind of met you and started to find out about your world. And they've got like a glimmer now of like, okay, I see a path. Nobody's ever explained it this way. I've never had a strategy like this before. And they come into your world and they're having problems and challenges and they chime in because you've created a community around your work, not just you one-to-one. So you've got a community.
Right.
And they come in with their problem and guess who's there? Somebody who joined your group 9 months ago who has already worked through that chunk of your program and solved some of those problems and will just get right on that person and go, I was where you were like a
Yeah.
year ago. Here's what I
That's
did.
beautiful.
Here's the videos I watched that really helped, right? If you ever want to talk, send me a DM or we can have a call sometime. Well, I'm getting goosebumps thinking about this stuff because
I am too. I'm covered in truth. I call them truth bumps. I'm just like covered with them as you talk about this.
Yeah, I mean, it's wild because you're not the dickhead on top of the pyramid. Instead, you're the center of this thing. And the way you organize it is you trust the people in your community to take care of each other. And you're there. If anything falls through the cracks, you're the one. It's on you,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
What's your question? I'll research it. I'll find it. I'll make an update. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to stick my teeth into something. I'm going to figure it out, right? But like beyond that, you create a web of humans that are kind, caring humans, compassionate. You get people who are coming out of their shells because it's like everybody's an introvert. Oh, I've got chronic fatigue syndrome. I'm an introvert. And it's like you might be, but a lot of times introverts really are just overstimulated because their nervous system can't handle like normal human noises and like just the
Yeah.
nonsense,
The cacophony of life.
Yeah, but you get all these introverts in a group together, and all of a sudden, it's a party. And it's like, well, what happened? I thought you guys were all introverted. What's going on? But they like each other, and they help each other and stuff. So there's so much leverage. Again, this is going from a square to a cube to a tesseract, but there's so much leverage to getting out of. I do this point. I do this.
Yeah.
Yes, you should. You absolutely should. And building this whole other thing where you have a community layer. Because here's a question, right? If education is so important, and it is, I've said it is, I believe it is. If it's so important and so effective, why isn't everybody better already?
So true.
You can go
Because
to
you have all the world's information that's ever existed in the palm of our hands. And so if it was just education, we could just look it up and be better.
I mean, what do people want in life? Like you want financial success, you want to like be in love, you want to have a 6-pack, you want to be able to travel, right? Like all these
Well,
things,
that's yours. But yeah.
whatever it is, right? All those things, there's information on how to do all those things everywhere.
Yeah.
So it's not
But
an
why aren't people doing it? That's what you're asking.
It's not an information problem. So the next step, like the
It's an
square,
accountability problem.
all that, it's a culture problem.
Culture accountability.
Yeah.
Follow through.
If you replace the default culture with one that you've designed with intention that's optimized around healing and what it's going to take to do that, you create a new set of cultural norms that influence the subconscious decisions that the individuals are making every single day that moves them closer or further away from the goals that they have. So that will help with adherence to your methods, right? Is that you create a culture now. So, I mean, simple things like breath work. Everybody thinks they've done breath work because they went to a yoga class. I'm like, that's general. Like, it's not aimed at where you are right now. There's different ways to do this. But when you create a culture where people are showing up going, I did the stage 1 breathing exercise, or I did the stage 3 breathing exercise. And then all the other people who've been putting that off see that. Something in their subconscious goes, oh, maybe today I'll do it. And now they're taking action on the things you've been trying to say forever, or your digital clone has, right? And so
Yeah.
you actually get people doing what they need to do because there's a little bit of, I want to say like almost social pressure or peer pressure, right? But it's not even aggressive. It's just that's the norm. And in this environment, this is just what we do. We take time to breathe like this because our values are, I'm worth it.
A big part, I haven't even asked you this, but one of the things I realized earlier on in our conversation is a big part of creating a culture like this for your patients is you need to know what you want as a practitioner. And I don't think a lot of practitioners know what they want. They think they know what they want. But I think if we were to stop and really ask a practitioner, what do you want? It's hard for a lot of people to answer that with clarity. They know what they don't want. They don't want to be paycheck to paycheck or thinking about their clinic closing. They don't want people to miss their appointments, but flip that. What do you want? I think that that's a big question.
Well,
We all
yeah.
need to be asking ourselves.
And a lot of times we're so addicted to the status quo because our ego's there for self-preservation, right? So whatever happened yesterday didn't kill us because we're alive today. So I'll just have more of that, please. And that's kind of like a lot of the resistance. So if you say, well, what do you want? And people can tell you whatever they think they want, but really a lot of what they want is just stability and predictability.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of goes at odds with like growth and what you say you want. So now it's like
Right.
you got to navigate that relationship too.
Yeah.
You know how
Interesting.
people get sick and they're forced to pay attention to their health,
Yeah.
right? It's like you can kind of coast if nothing's really going on. You can just kind of coast through life at a certain level of health or vitality or whatever. But when something happens and it forces you to pay attention, if you can get up and out of that, you wind up with this new set of habits and beliefs and behaviors and skills and insights that can actually get you a higher state of health than when you started, right?
Right.
It is, but it's like it's one of those things where like kind of getting sick, almost people have gratitude for it after because they're like,
Yeah.
"Man, this forced me to pay attention to X, Y, and Z things that were affecting my health." And now I'm like, I didn't even know I could feel this good,
Right.
And I think it's like that too for practitioners, right? Like your business can coast along at a certain level, and it's okay, but unless you start bumping into some rough edges, and now
Right.
all of a sudden that pain motivation is like, oh my God, I can't, what is going on here? And if you get upskilled, right, and you figure out and you learn the new ways to create and to bypass a lot of those problems, you'll come out the other side with a way better business model and a humming experience that you wouldn't have had otherwise.
But so true. I mean, and everything you shared today is that journey that you went on to be where you are and see things differently.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I had a mix of ambition of like, okay, I think the internet's got some real potential here. If anybody can do it, I'm going to figure it out. I can do it too. Plus, just neurotic pain avoidance. Honestly, whenever something happened and it rubbed me the wrong way, I would just, I'm going to figure that out. And then I would know what to say next time. And just that kind of weird neuroses. It made me vigilant. And so pain, motivation, and pleasure. And I like I like the ride so far.
To bring it full circle, being on the outside of the box in your small community was always part of the plan. It sounds like you probably built some tough mental strategies and or patterns that you're still using today when someone pushes you the wrong way or tells you don't belong here. You're like, watch me, like middle finger, watch me.
I've actually gotten softer over the years. I think I'm
I know
better
you have.
interacting.
I
Yeah,
know you have.
I think so. Yeah,
It's really nice to still be in connection and watch part of that journey to be part of to be part of it with you.
it's okay. I still get pariahed though. It's all right. That's still happening. That's fine.
Well, you have a very strong personality. So naturally that's going to happen. Right?
I think so. Yeah, but that's a skill we have to get is to try to work down at some of the rough edges, and you got to put the right cheese around your pill.
Oh, that's funny. Well, earlier you said that this medicine, beautiful, graceful medicine, as you were talking about Chinese medicine, and I don't even know if you remember saying it, but I think so much of what you've shared since that beginning exploration about creating a symphony and being the conductor speaks to not only how the medicine is flowing through you, but how the medicine is flowing through you to create structure and paradigms and possibilities for other healthcare practitioners so that it doesn't have to be just because it's always been this way. And that's really exciting to hear. I mean,
That's cool. Yeah, I like that a lot.
yeah,
There's philosophy. There's bigger principles that make things work. Like Chinese medicine or Eastern medicine, that's a manifestation of a certain philosophy or a few of them kind of put together. But we can point that philosophy at other stuff. We can point Taoism at building a business, and you can try to find that same thread, because once you feel something, even something relatively simple, like once the first time you put a motor point in somebody's shoulder and then they can raise their arm again, or you do something down on their ankle or whatever, and they can raise their arm again, and you're like, whoa, the philosophy here, I've applied it and it worked, right? You
yeah,
get that feeling, and now it's like I want everything to feel like that.
yeah.
if I know it's possible in this one area, there's got to be other ways to do it everywhere.
Can I share with you the teaching that I've been holding very near and dear to my heart for the last few years from you? And I don't even know if you meant to say it, but it's what stuck. And you said, clarity is kindness.
Oh, that's not me. That's
Oh, it's not you?
no, that's Brene Brown, I think.
You may have been quoting Brene Brown,
Yeah.
but I heard it from you. So to
Oh,
me, it's from you. And that was one of those moments where you have this aha moment in one part of your life. And then in every single other aspect of your life, it took on a life of its own. And I cannot tell you how freeing that was, because I had kept myself in the box as an indecisive person for so long. Even my husband would say all the time, just make a decision. I'm like, I can't make a decision. I don't make decisions. My personality is
yeah.
one of like, I need to know all the research and then I'll make a decision. And just like that, literally in a text or in one of our conversations, I can't even remember what it was. It hit me so hard. And from that day forward, clarity, make a decision. It's clear. Are you centered in it? Make the decision, move forward. And everything in my life has changed because of that one little piece.
Yeah, that one stuck with me too. I think that's a powerful distinction. With decisions, a lot of us are perfectionists and we want to make the right decision. You can try looking at your decision and how reversible or permanent it is. So if you're trying to decide what to wear today and you just can't figure it out, that's a super reversible decision. So just pick something, you know?
Right. If you don't like it, put something else on, right?
Yeah. If it's like, what kind of face tattoo should I get? Like maybe you do want to ruminate with it.
Yeah. But even clinically, I remember I would get so hung up on trying to make the right pattern diagnosis right away. And all of a sudden, it freed up my brain so much that, oh, wow, the pattern diagnosis was actually quite easier to find because I wasn't having the pressure and the stress of getting it right.
Yes.
It was like the most counterintuitive thing. And I've applied that to everywhere. When I go to the restaurant, I order the thing I will not cook for myself, period. That's my rule. And that's clarity is kindness. It really was a ripple effect that I had no idea how impactful it would be. And I just wanted to share it with you because I don't think I've had the opportunity to share it with you in person, but also it speaks to the wisdom that flows through you. I'm just really grateful. So thank you.
Well, a lot of times we confuse being nice with being kind, and it has to do with power. And a lot of people don't want anything to do with power because they've got such a negative connotation about it, like absolute power and whatever else. Like, oh, powerful people are mean. I don't want to be powerful. I want to be nice. And it's like, well, if we want to empower our patients, we're going around giving out power. So we need to fix our relationship with that word so that we can do better at it, right? But a lot of times people are nice because they don't feel powerful, but being liked is a strategy to help you get what you want from other people.
Absolutely. It's a coping mechanism. It was for me.
Yeah, and I had to deal with that too with my own self. I was like doing a lot of weird things and find a lot of practitioners overcompensate this way. We try to nice our way out of clinical weaknesses. Well, if the patient likes me, they'll keep coming back even though I don't know how to fix their problem. There's weird stuff early on. But yeah, I think kindness is actually quite a power-backed feature. And so if my kid, I got to take that Band-Aid off, the kindest thing to do is to just be powerful about it and just rip it off fast and be there and like, give a hug or whatever, instead of try to be nice and just like, or like try to be nice and be like, I don't know. I mean, maybe we should just leave it on for like another week, I mean, is that okay with you? Like, that's just not, it doesn't serve the actual reality that's there of like the Band-Aid needs to come off, and it's kind of like that with a lot of this stuff where the less fear we have, the more power we have about a lot of things. And then it's very important to remain kind. What
Yeah.
kindness level and your power level, they got to be like about the same, but that's not the same thing as being nice.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Jeremy, I'm going to have you back on if you're okay with that. It doesn't have
Anytime.
to be right away. I know you're a very busy person, but maybe you're not because you've biohacked your
Yeah.
practice. I'll have you on every week.
Yeah. Busyness used to be a status symbol, but I've gone the other way.
Thank goodness I'm working towards that. Yinspired is inspired by the yin. And as a person who has very much idolized and lived by yang, I'm practicing it, right? I'm starting this podcast because it asked me to, and I'm learning a lot about slowing down. So I appreciate your willingness to come on and share your wisdom and share your light with us. I like to end with a rapid fire. You open to it?
Yeah, sure. I didn't look at any of the questions. I have no idea
Well,
what.
that's even better. And really, it's the first thing that comes to mind. It doesn't have to be the most accurate, just the first thing that comes to mind. You ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. Best advice you've ever received.
The best advice I've ever received is that advice is medicinal. So people can give you good advice, well-intentioned, but it doesn't match your situation. It'll actually make you worse off.
Like food, that's similar to the food can be medicine or toxin.
Yep. Medicinal advice.
Ooh,
Advice, yeah.
powerful. Okay, what's the worst advice you've ever received?
Sell the next visit.
Perfect. Are you a morning bird or night owl?
I used to be a night owl, and now I'm more of a morning bird. Yeah. I think night
What's your
owls a lot of times think they're introverts and just don't want to be bothered by people. So you stay up later than your family so you can have quiet time. I've
Ooh,
outgrown
we
that.
might have to come back to that one. There's more to that. I can already hear it in your answer. What's your favorite food treat?
Food, cookies.
What's your favorite tea?
Where?
A book that changed your life or your mindset?
Anti-Fragile was really good.
I'll make sure that we have that in the show notes. Okay, finish the sentence. Be the type of person who.
Your dog thinks you are.
Okay, what would you do if you weren't doing the current work you're doing today?
This is it. No, I don't know. I'd be just doing the same thing with different people, Same type of principles, just a different niche or, whatever.
Yeah. One wish for healthcare.
Wake up.
There you have it. Thank you so much for being here, Jeremy. Where can our listeners connect with you and find your work?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram, jeremycornish.dgdc, which stands for Damn Good Doctors Club. That's a good place. I'm on YouTube, the normal stuff. Instagram's
we'll
probably
make
where
sure
I'm having the most fun.
Okay, fun. I'll make sure we have those linked in the show notes as well. Thank you again for being here. For all you listeners, please subscribe and share this podcast with someone you know or love and help us make a positive ripple in our communities. If you'd like to continue this conversation or would like to know more about Yinspired, read the transcript of today's show and find all the resources and links discussed in today's episode, please subscribe to this podcast feed at substack.com/Yinspired. It's free to join and you'll be emailed with every new episode along with the ability to comment and continue the conversation started here. From my heart to yours, create a day you love. This podcast is for entertainment, education, and inspirational purposes only. Nothing in this podcast is diagnostic or direct medical advice and does not establish a practitioner-patient relationship. Seek care from a highly trained medical provider for your healthcare concerns.